Welcome to ACE Your RES Exam Case Studies Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
We're diving into some real-world scenarios today, cases that offer really crucial lessons if you're involved in property transactions.
Absolutely, especially if you're, preparing for the RES exams or already working in the field.
And hey, if you find this deep dive useful as we go, please do take a second right now to like it and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, it really helps us keep bringing you these kinds of practical insights.
Okay, so our mission today is simple. Unpack these cases, examples sent in by listeners like you, actually.
And pull out those key nuggets, right?
Okay.
About professional conduct, due diligence.
Exactly, and how to steer clear of some pretty common and sometimes expensive pitfalls.
Learning from these situations, these real mistakes, it's just invaluable. It's beyond textbook theory.
It really builds that ethical foundation, doesn't it?
It does. And honestly, we've got some fascinating, maybe even slightly shocking situations to talk through.
All right, let's get into the first one. This involves seller's stamp duty, or SSD. Getting the calculation wrong cost a client dearly.
Yeah, this is a classic issue. The core problem was a salesperson gave advice on SSD liability based on, well, the wrong information.
They relied on sources like the SRX app or maybe the Realis portal.
Exactly. Sources that are convenient, sure, but they usually show the option to purchase issue date.
Right, the OTP date. And that's not the date you need for SSD calculations, is it?
No, absolutely not. You need the actual property purchase date.
So in this case, what happened? The agent checked the app?
Right. Check the SRX app, say, on March 24th, 2020. Based only on that OTP date shown, they confidently told the seller, you're clear of SSD if you sell after March 23rd.
Oh, dear. So they even advised delaying the transaction based on this?
That's exactly what happened. They thought they were helping the client avoid the tax.
And the consequence?
The client got hit with a huge SSD bill, over $26,000.
Wow. Because the sale actually was within the holding period?
Yes. The crucial 4-year holding period, when calculated correctly from the actual purchase date,
Which was?
May 10th, 2016. That was the real purchase date, completely missed because the salesperson didn't check the right place.
So this really drives it home for you listening. When you're advising on SSD, why is using the correct source just non-negotiable?
Because everything hinges on that purchase date. The only reliable sources are the original sale and purchase agreement.
The S&P.
Right, the S&P agreement, or the Singapore Land Authority's INLIS portal.
And in LIS, just for anyone maybe less familiar, that's the official government system, the definitive record for transaction dates, ownership history.
Precisely. So the takeaway is crystal clear. Due diligence isn't just a buzzword. For SSD, you must verify that purchase date using the S&P or INLIS.
Full stop. Relying on anything else is basically gambling with your client's money.
And your reputation, frankly.
Okay, so that first case really hammered home the need for factual accuracy from the right sources. But sometimes the pressures agents face can lead down a totally different path into serious ethical trouble.
Yeah, this next case study, it involves managing client expectations, but it went really, really wrong.
This is the case involving salesperson Zhang Wailu. Tell us about it.
Okay, so Zhang was marketing an HDB flat. The seller wanted $580,000, which seemed, well, maybe a bit high for the market at the time.
And after a few months, no buyers.
4 months, no takers. The seller wouldn't budge on price, but did ask about getting a valuation.
Which is a reasonable step, but Zhang's approach wasn't standard, was it?
No. Instead of suggesting a formal valuation by a licensed valuer, the proper way, he proposed something else entirely.
What did he suggest?
He suggested creating a fake buyer and submitting a completely fictitious OTP to HDB.
Wait, a fake transaction just to trigger a valuation?
Exactly that. He actually drafted an OTP for $535,000, put himself down as the buyer, used his own NRIC. Yes. Then he forged the seller's signature on it and signed as the witness himself.
That's multiple layers of deception, forgery, false representation.
Absolutely. Purely to get HDB to generate a valuation report based on this fake offer.
Did HDB do the valuation?
They did. It came back at $525,000. Zhang then took this report to the seller and, used it to convince him to lower the asking price.
And eventually a real buyer came along.
Yes, a genuine buyer was found actually at that $525,000 price point, and a proper, real OTP was exercised and submitted.
So it almost sounds like the end justified the means in his mind, perhaps. But how did the deception come to light?
Well, HDB's checks flagged issues. False declarations in the intent to buy linked to that fake OTP.
Ah, okay.
And critically, they noticed 2 OTPs for the same flat. submitted around the same time, but with different seller signatures. That was the big red flag.
So they investigated.
They checked with the actual seller, who confirmed signing only one OTP. The forgery was exposed.
And the consequences for Zhang Weilu must have been serious.
Very. He was convicted for deceitful acts that discredited the whole industry. A major breach of the Code of Ethics and Professional Client Care.
What was the penalty?
A 3-month suspension from practice and a $2,500 fine.
And the expert view on this is pretty clear, right? There was an ethical way to do this.
Absolutely. A formal valuation by a licensed professional was the correct, ethical path to help the seller understand the market value and make an informed decision.
His actions, even if they led to a sale eventually, were just fundamentally dishonest.
Completely deceitful and illegal. It raises a crucial question for anyone listening, especially when you're facing pressure, maybe a tough client, or a listing that just won't move.
Where are those ethical lines you absolutely cannot cross? What seems like a shortcut can lead straight to professional disaster.
The key takeaway here is just unwavering ethical conduct. Integrity is non-negotiable.
Using deceit, forging documents, making things up, it doesn't matter what the outcome is.
It's a serious breach, period. Always stick to the proper, authorized procedures, even if it feels harder or slower sometimes.
Right. Okay, so we've seen the need for accuracy, the danger of ethical shortcuts. This third case study kind of brings things together. It touches on accuracy again, but also fair dealing with clients and other agents.
Yeah, this one actually involves two related examples, Case 3A and 3B. They really highlight how fundamental details like property size can blow up if not handled correctly.
And how fairness in dealings is critical.
Exactly. It underscores verifying everything and fulfilling your core duties.
Okay, let's start with case 3A, salesperson A. What was the initial mistake here?
It started with listing an HDB flat's floor area incorrectly. She put down 1,259 square feet based on some online source.
Without checking the official source, like NNIS or HDB docs.
Precisely. The actual size was 12, 15, 16 square feet. Not a huge difference maybe, but inaccurate.
And it wasn't just a typo she made once.
No, the problem was she kept affirming the wrong size 1259 square to potential buyers,
Yeah.
even during viewings.
And apparently, even when a standard home report was generated, which showed the correct 1216 square size, she didn't point out the discrepancy.
Correct. It wasn't highlighted, and the buyers, well, they didn't spot it at that stage. They only realized the flat was smaller when they got the official valuation report later on.
By which point they'd already signed the OTP.
Yes. And when they tried to resolve it with salesperson A, asking for maybe a partial refund or a price adjustment, the transcript says she basically ignored them.
And the listing online was just quietly updated to the correct size?
Seems so. But the OTP lapsed because the issue wasn't resolved.
Meaning the buyers lost their option fee.
Exactly. Purely down to an initial inaccuracy that wasn't verified and then wasn't handled transparently.
What happened to salesperson A?
She was convicted, failure to act reasonably towards the buyers, and misrepresentation of the floor area. Got a 1-month suspension and a $1,500 fine.
Okay, now case 3B sounds like it takes these issues even further. Salespersons B and C involved here.
It does. Salesperson B also misrepresented property size, but this time for a landed property. Claimed a built-in area of 4,000 square feet.
When the actual size was.
Significantly smaller, around 2,800 square feet. And like the previous case, she actively marketed this wrong size, even put it on flyers.
And confirmed it again just before the offer to purchase was signed.
Yes. But her misconduct didn't stop there. This is where it gets much worse.
What else happened?
She committed a major breach of fiduciary duty to her own clients, the sellers. She actually received a higher offer for the property.
Higher than the one she eventually got accepted.
Yes. An offer for $2.83 million came in from another interested party, but she failed to tell her owners about it.
She didn't convey the higher offer. Why would she do that? And what did she do with it?
The why isn't fully clear from the summary, but the what is shocking. She actually destroyed the option fee check that came with that $2.83 million offer.
Destroyed the check. So she actively concealed the better offer.
It appears so. Instead, she went back to the buyers who had made a lower offer and convinced them to increase their offer slightly to $2.818 million. And that's the offer the owners accepted, completely unaware of the higher $2.83 million one.
Wow. So she deliberately denied her clients the best possible outcome.
That's what the conviction implies. And there was another layer of unethical behavior involving salesperson C.
What was that?
Salesperson B apparently cut her own estate agency out of the deal, commission-wise. She had her husband, who was salesperson C, sign the offer to purchase documentation, effectively bypassing her agency.
So, multiple ethical violations. Did the buyers in this case also find out about the size discrepancy?
Yes, they did, after signing
Excellent.
the offer to purchase. They saw official documents, like maybe an IRSA letter showing the gross floor area around 2873 CREFT, got their own measurements done, saw the bank valuation, all confirming the size was nowhere near the 4,000 SCREFT claimed.
What was the outcome for those buyers?
Understandably, they didn't proceed with the purchase. They forfeited their option fee, had to cancel their bank loan, which likely incurred penalties, and ended up suing the agents and the owners. A real mess.
And the consequences for salespersons B and C reflected the severity.
They did. Salesperson B, convicted for the size misrepresentation, excluding her agent, and the huge failure of fiduciary duty in not conveying the higher offer and destroying the check. She got a 4-month suspension and a $5,000 fine.
And salesperson C?
He was convicted for his part in excluding salesperson B's agency from the commission. He received a 2-month suspension and a $2,000 fine.
Industry experts looking at these cases really stress some key points, don't they?
Absolutely. First, the vital need to verify information, especially something as basic as property size, before you even start marketing. Use the official sources, NNLAS, HDB, BCA, for gross floor area on landed properties. Don't guess. Don't rely on old listings or online calculators alone.
Because buyers rely so heavily on the agent for this stuff.
Totally. Misrepresentation, whether it's negligent, innocent initially, or fraudulent, is a serious violation. And second, the absolute duty to convey every single offer to your client.
That failure to convey the $2.83 offer and destroying the check, that's just indefensible.
It's a fundamental breach of your duty to act in the client's best interest. Always.
So when you put these two cases, 3A and 3B, side by side, it's really interesting, isn't it? From what might seem like a small inaccuracy about size to these major ethical failures, it shows how critical the fundamentals are. Why is that deep verification, like transparent communication, presenting every offer? Why isn't it just good practice? Why is it a core professional obligation?
Because trust is everything in this business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Clients are making huge life decisions, huge financial commitments, based on what you tell them and what you do for them.
Yeah.
If the information's wrong, if you're not transparent, if you don't pass on offers, if you cut corners, you shatter that trust. It hurts your client directly. It damages the reputation of all agents. And as we've seen, it leads to serious personal consequences.
Okay, let's try and pull together the main insights from all three of these quite impactful case studies.
Yeah, they definitely paint a very clear picture of what's absolutely essential in real estate practice.
First up, it seems like due diligence is just non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Verifying the facts, we talked about purchase dates for SSD, property sizes using the correct authoritative sources, S&P agreements, INLIS, BCA data, no shortcuts.
Second, accuracy and truthfulness. It's not just about getting the facts right initially, but being transparent if something is wrong.
Right. Misrepresenting details, even if you didn't mean to at first, needs immediate correction. You have to be upfront with everyone involved. Ignoring it, like in Case 3A, just makes things worse.
Then there's ethical conduct, that case with the fake OTP.
A really stark reminder, wasn't it? Using deceit, forgery, any kind of dishonest shortcut, it doesn't matter what you're trying to achieve. It's a fundamental violation. Stick to the proper channels.
And finally, maybe the most important duty of all, fiduciary duty.
Acting solely in your client's best interest, complete transparency, and, crucially, conveying every single offer you receive. Withholding offers, like in Case 3B, is a massive breach of trust.
And the consequences we saw across these cases show it's not just about rules on paper.
No, failure leads to real harm. Significant financial loss for clients, damage to the profession's standing in the public eye, and serious disciplinary actions, suspensions, fines for the agent involved.
So, for everyone listening, think of these not just as horror stories, but as really practical lessons.
Exactly. Mastering these core principles, diligence, accuracy, ethics, fiduciary duty, that's how you protect your clients.
And how you build a career based on trust, a career that lasts.
Couldn't agree more.
We've definitely unpacked some incredibly important lessons today just by looking at these real situations. They really highlight that absolute need for diligence, for ethics, and just always putting your client first.
Yeah, learning from these real-world examples gives you such valuable perspective, whether you're still studying for the RES exam or you're out there dealing with clients day to day.
So as you kind of reflect on these cases, maybe as you move forward in your own studies or your practice, here's something to think about. Beyond just knowing the rules in the book, How do you build your own personal system? A kind of ingrained habit, really. A system for diligence, for transparency, for that unwavering commitment to your client's absolute best interest.
That's a great question. It's about designing your own process, isn't it? So these kinds of failures just aren't even possible.
Yeah, something to really mull over.
Definitely food for thought.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.
Always a pleasure.